Here we are. We're live again, coming to you out of Field Service USA Palm Springs, and I've got Sarah Nicastro here. Sarah, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. Actually, I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan of future of Field Service, and I first came across your show when you interviewed Troy Dockery.
Okay.
And you were talking about remote assistance and all of that, and since then I've been really a big fan of your show. And Sarah, you've come here to Field Service USA, and you had like 3 panel discussions, and one of the key topics at one of the panels was women in service, and how important is that to bring this level of diversity to our industry, and what impact that will have. And I know you're very passionate about it, so why don't we kick it off with that? So why, I'm going to ask the obvious question. Why is it important for us to invest in bringing more diversity into the industry, and more specifically involve more women in the industry?
Yeah, great question. And yes, I had 3 sessions today. It's been a busy day, and that was the last of the 3. I had the honor to moderate a panel with 5 women in service that are here in leadership roles, talking about their journeys. Why is it important to increase diversity? I think, at this conference, everyone's talking about the innovation that is taking place, needs to take place, and innovation requires people to, be open-minded, think differently, get outside of their sort of complacency or, comfort zones, right? And I think diversity of thought is what is imperative to innovation. So the only way to bring diversity of thought into an organization is to create diversity among who is a part of the team, right? And I think, women certainly play a really big role in that, but so do all sorts of diversity, right? If you look around the audience here, I've been coming to this event for quite a long time. I shared today during that session that the first time I spoke here, I bombed. I was one of maybe 2 women at the conference overall. And there was a lot of pressure, right? In feeling like, do I belong here? Do I have something to contribute to the conversation? And the reason I bombed is because I got up on stage feeling like I needed to pretend to be something and someone that I wasn't in order to fit in, right? And it was only once I learned that I don't need to try and be anyone but myself. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room to have something to contribute. You don't have to try and fit into a certain mold, etc. You just need to be you and bring your own voice. Once I started doing that, things started getting a lot better, right? So I think today's session was really about giving those 5 women an opportunity to share their voices and talk a bit about what their journeys have been like in this industry. Some of the things that have been challenging, some of the things that they've really enjoyed, and for them to take their experiences and turn that into advice for people in the audience on how to, create that better diversity in this space.
And I want to go deeper into that. So what are some of the challenges that women face in getting involved in our industry? What are some of the key takeaways that you've gotten out of the panel, like some of the obstacles that's stopping us from having more diversity and more women involved in our industry?
Yeah. So one of the panelists was saying that, even not too long ago, she was attending a meeting, a stakeholder meeting, and with some folks outside of their organization. And when she walked into the room, a gentleman said to her, "Are you here to bring us coffee?" And this is like, maybe it happened a year ago, 2022. Like, we're not talking about, long ago. Those things still happen. And one of the things we talked about, another panelist shared that in her career trajectory, she had at one point a pretty toxic leader, and she was able to get out of that situation, stayed within the same company, but just moved into a better spot. But we talked about the fact that a lot of times the challenges, there can be people that are truly toxic or are, doing or saying things maliciously. But a lot of times it isn't malicious. It's just, moving beyond some outdated thinking, some preconceived notions, predefined gender stereotypes that, have existed historically, et cetera. So it's not necessarily, that gentleman may not have been trying to be a jerk. He, I don't think we need to think the worst of people, but we need to check our own, thoughts and make sure that we're not saying and doing things like that then make that woman feel like, are you kidding?
Exactly.
No, I'm the SVP of whatever at whatever
Right.
company, right? So I think, some of the things that the women shared is, feeling that you don't have the same margin for error as men do because you're being judged maybe more harshly than your male peers. Some of the women talked about, feeling less than confident in speaking your opinion or using your voice, right? And, having the confidence to speak out and being confident in the fact that you're there for a reason, et cetera. So those were some of the stories that came up in some of the challenges that the women have faced.
Wow. I mean, it's real challenges, and it's happening every day. You can imagine these kind of scenarios, plays itself out every day. So, and how do you even start to address these core issues in our industry, which a lot of it is more perception than it is like like it's not like women are incompetent to do a lot of these work, and these are not even technical work, right? You're talking about leadership positions, so you're not just talking about like, maybe you may think, women can't fix stuff, which my mother used to fix everything. I was the guy that's breaking things around the house, and my mother used to fix things. So
sure.
But you're all talking about this lack of diversity, not just in the front lines of the organization, but across the org.
Right. Yeah, and I think in field service, a lot of the people that move through the ranks into supervisor roles, management roles, director roles, and beyond do so from the front line. So if you have a lack of women in frontline roles, that's going to kind of fuel itself, right?
Yeah.
So then you either have to get more intentional about bringing female leaders in or diverse leaders of whatever, flavor we're speaking, bringing diverse leaders in because they're not going to come up through the historical ranks of experience that, used to happen. Or you need to bring more women into the front line so that there's more opportunity for them to also progress, into those leadership roles. And I think there's, different challenges depending on the role you're speaking about. The panel today happened to be with women in leadership roles, but, the challenges to recruit women into frontline field technician roles varies a lot depending on what industry we're talking about, right? Because there are certain industries where that can be particularly challenging, either because there are actual mandates of the job that can be tough, or, there may be certain roles that just don't appeal as much for various reasons. But, generally speaking, I think one of the things that we talked about today is, really examining job postings, job descriptions, and thinking about, is there language in here that's going to leave people out without us intending to, if it says must lift 50 pounds, I mean, is that truly something that's required, or has it just been a part of that job posting for the last 20 years, right? So really reflecting on
that rebels, obviously.
Sure, it could, but we also, the women talked about making sure that you are using hiring boards and making sure that there's a female representative or diversity in general on the committee that's hiring for different positions, interviewing for different positions. I think with diversity, it's sort of this trade-off of, there's the quote like, what you improve what you measure, right? So I think there is this element of it's good to know where you stand, have objectives, and measure against those. But all too often, I think we fall into this trap of then diversity becoming this checkbox. Are we hitting these metrics? And in reality, the companies that are making the most progress are doing so because they actually value that diversity of thought. So it isn't about, did we hit our targets for this, or this? It's
Right.
about, we know
Equality
we will be
of- yeah.
better as an organization if we have a whole bunch of different skill sets, experiences, mentalities, etc., personalities, all of that.
And that takes cultural shift in the organization, where, and it's not only about women, but it's allowing allowing other people to have thoughtful disagreements inside the organization, and allowing people to voice out their ideas, even if it's not necessarily accurate, but at least have a venue or have a culture that accepts different opinion, right? Radical honesty and thoughtful disagreement, because that's where meaningful conversations, that's when meaningful conversation happen, on one breakthrough conversation happens. So it's really more of a cultural shift. How do you enable this culture of, hey, it's a good, constructive conflict, to have this debate and conflicts, and make sure that it's constructive. And big part of it is obviously to fuel this conversation, enabling and attracting women into the workforce, because women obviously come with a certain perspective on things, and from their experience. And when it comes to building organizations, I don't know if there's anyone else that's more qualified than women when it comes to building organizations, and that ties back to building families, right? So there's a lot of experience and skill set and value that we're missing out on by not being as diverse. And like you said, it's not about just checking a box, but it also has a lot of bottom line impacts. So one of the things that come to mind, like I'm a big fan of Shark Tank. I don't know if you watch Shark Tank. Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, very big time successful investor, and he said he never had a woman CEO that failed, or entrepreneur. All of his portfolio, the best performing portfolio companies were interestingly enough run by women. So why do you think is that?
So let me say a couple things. I mean, first, I think you mentioned radical honesty. So I think it has to be radical and respectful honesty. Okay, this is one of the key elements here. Is we can talk about having diversity objectives, but when it comes to then equity and inclusion, you want to accomplish the ultimate goal, which is not just to bring diversity in, but to keep that diversity and to allow it to flourish.
Because you're not going to attract women, but
any diverse segment. Like, if it's a culture of radical honesty from a fairly homogenous group of people that isn't respectful to the diverse candidates you're bringing in, they're not going to want to stick around, right? The other thing, just in terms of challenging a bit, is I want to be cautious. We're not always comparing women to motherhood and families. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm a mom, so that applies to me. But there are a lot of really intelligent, powerful women that choose not to have families or don't have families. Yes. So a woman's worth and skill set in the workplace is not tied to that sort of skill set.
I guess the underlying, makeup, right? Just human, by default, women are more empathetic.
Yeah, so there's a book that I read recently, and it's called Strong Female Lead. Now, I won't remember the author's name, and I apologize for that, but it's really good, and it talks about that point, right? It isn't necessarily like, the title kind of made me think it was going to be about like fostering more female leadership, and it's not. It's about, thinking about the different traits and qualities we have and
enable
balancing
success.
that. And so when you think about going back to your question, how do we kind of create situations where we can have better diversity? A lot of it comes back to leadership. You know, company culture is determined by leaders carrying out the thinking and the action and the mentality of the organization. So if you have leaders in place that don't truly value diversity genuinely, you're not going to be able to create an environment where it can thrive, right? So I think, reflecting on what are your core values, and, are you approaching diversity because you think it really matters and it's imperative to the success of your business, or are you doing it because it's a hot topic and you feel like you need to, play a role in that? So, that's, I think, what matters a lot when it comes to not only bringing more diverse candidates in, but creating an environment that they will want to stay in.
I love it. So if we want to wrap up this conversation by, maybe from your experience as a service leader, what are some things that we can action today? Let's not talk about, just about attracting women into the workforce. You will have existing, female in the workforce. So how do you keep them and give them a voice, and start encouraging diversity and making women, giving them a voice and more including them in the decision-making process with the existing workforce that you have, before we start talking about, well, let's increase the number of women in the organization. So how do we start empowering women in our workforce today? Like, what are some of the steps we can start moving towards that diversified culture?
Yeah. Well, I think if you want to give women a voice, that starts with listening. So the best thing you can do is start asking more questions. What do you enjoy about your experience at this organization? What about our leadership do you find how impactful, and what would you change? What benefits could we add to our employee value proposition that would be helpful to you? And those conversations go for any candidate you're trying to get more of or keep more of, right? I think, there was a gentleman that pulled us aside after the panel earlier, and he was asking some of the women about this situation that he's struggling with in promoting this woman within his organization. And, one of the women said, he was saying, she's this, she's great, et cetera. And they said, well, have you told her that? No, like, I thought she knew, right? So, it's this idea of there's so much about this that comes back to intent, authenticity, and communication. And so just having more of the conversations. What are we doing well? What could we be doing better? What do you need more of? What do you need that we're not giving you? And have those conversations with your employees, because it's going to help you keep them. And they're also going to bring up points that you can then use when you're creating, the value proposition to bring new folks in.
I love that. And to, take it even further, whether you're doing, ENPS or whatever qualitative method you're using, documenting that voice of your employee and then reflecting it back in your marketing. Like you said, how do you bring that voice forward in your messaging, so that you make it very clear that, hey, we're a culture where we appreciate diversity, and here's some of the benefits that some of our women in our workforce feel that this is valuable and might be different than other companies. So this is a really great first step towards more diversity. And I appreciate you so much for coming on our new podcast here and blessing us with your presence. And I'm looking forward to more conversations and digging deeper into these core issues. Thank you so much, Sarah,
Thanks
coming
for having me.
today. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, folks. So there you have it. Sarah Nicastro, the future of field service. Make sure you check out her website, check out her podcast. A lot of great topics and diverse topics, whether it's about people, it's about technology, especially around technology. I think Sarah is one of the more progressive service leaders out there who could, if you're looking into, implementing new ERP or transforming your field service operation with technology. I don't know of a better resource for you to check out. So again, thank you so much. And guys, I'll see you on the next podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.